Welcome to Phonogenics 101, a Riotboy production hosted by Jeremy Gloff. The podcast where people who love music discuss albums track by track. Please hit subscribe, and if you'd like to support this podcast, patreon.com/Jeremy Gloff or Venmo @Jeremy Gloff. And now, on to the music. Hello, welcome to Phonogenics 101. We are here to talk about the second Blondie album, Plastic Letters. Plastic Letters. We are both very busy tonight, so it's going to be a little bit shorter of an episode. But Daniel has a really exciting announcement to make before we talk about Blondie.
Yes,
take it away.
I have my new album, Mixtape Summer, which is my love letter to summer jams and driving in your car, playing fun music really loud. Which Plastic Letters is a really great album to do that with. Actually, there's a lot of really good summer jam songs on that album, but it's just my love letter to fun summertime music, and it's so it's called Mixtape Summer, and it came out today. It's on all the major corporate streaming services.
And which album is this of yours?
It's oh god, I don't know how many albums this is, but the name of the album is Mixtape Summer.
Okay.
Mixtape.
Cool. And you have a new video coming out tomorrow.
Yes, video for 1, 2, 3, 4 Rock Out.
And one final question was the dance song that was out part of this album?
Yes, it is. So the it's weird. I actually thought the album was going to come out last fall.
Okay.
And so I released the dance single Infinite Stars, and then
which I loved, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And I that's a great song. It's so much fun. It's like retro synth type of stuff,
but still modern enough. So it's retro, but still,
And then my partner Corey directed a really fun video for that one. That was very kind of retro looking, and we're going to be making it. We've already filmed a bunch of videos for this one, so this is coming out tomorrow. But then there's another video that's coming out, a dance remix for my song Hovering. And that's gonna we're wearing green screen suits, body suits. So there's all this, it's crazy. There's all this. Yeah. So I want to make videos for every single song on the album. So
I might have to drive up and be in a video.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here we are, Blondie's second album, released in 1978. Plastic Letters. I have the two different CD editions. I had the different bonus tracks, but we're just gonna talk about the album proper tonight.
So that means you have the really interesting, almost reggae version of Heart of Glass.
Yes.
The disco song. It's so, I still like it, but it's just so different. I mean, it's so weird to see how a song can evolve.
Yeah.
That version is I remember the first time I heard that, I was I almost didn't recognize the song at first. I was this is Heart of Glass, but it's man, it is really different. And as a matter of fact, that's when I learned that I was singing a lot of the wrong lyrics.
Oh, so I did look at Debbie's book. The dress she wore on the cover, originally she had a white dress with red tape. The record company didn't like it, but if you Google Debbie Harry white dress, red tape, you can see the original Plastic Letters picture that the record company didn't want to use.
Oh, is it the same pool? Because I know that on the Best of Blondie, there's they actually have a photo of her wearing a red dress wearing a white dress with red tape on it, and it has kind of these shoulder things.
They're sitting on a car. The picture I found, they're sitting on a car, and Clem Burke's wearing the same outfit as the Plastic Letters cover.
She is wearing in a different on my copy of the Best of Blondie, it's it was I got this thing where it was the Best of Blondie, but then there was also the videos,
right?
So it was a double-sided thing. There was no, it couldn't have been doubles. It was
that's the picture of
it was that dress. That's the dress. So
cool.
Yeah.
Oh, instead they went with this cover with the police car. Like I said before, Jimmy Destry, if you're watching, 70s Jimmy Destry is my dream, man. I just think he's so hot. But yeah, this album is an interesting one because I thought the first one is a classic.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Parallel Lines is a classic. I just read some reviews before this podcast, and it said that this is a classic example of a sophomore slump. So,
I mean, it's not my favorite Blondie album. I mean, I had not listened to it in a while, although some of my favorite Blondie tracks, again, are on this album. I mean, the weird thing about Blondie is even on one of their like more off albums, there's still like some incredible songs on this. It has Touched by Your Presence, Dear.
I know.
That alone makes the album worth listening to, and I mean, I actually had like I actually wrote down some notes about
I love it.
Yeah, because I mean, there's certain songs that I really like I kind of forgot about. I forgot that they went like so country on one of the songs, this song of Kidnapper. I mean, it's they get kind of, and then I made we'll get into it, but I actually like also realized that there was like a bass part in it that I was like, wait a second, that's the same bass part, but we'll get into it.
Okay. Yeah, I always felt like the first Blondie albums to me are so cinematic. So I felt like the first Blondie movie was like those classic beach movies from the 50s and 60s with all the hot teenagers. I feel like Plastic Letters are like those B movies that weren't hits that they showed late at night, like on TV.
Yeah, like I'm so it wasn't just me, because it's like that I kind of had the same like reaction. Although I do have to say, I listened to the album again today. I bake a lot. Like so I don't do, like, as you know, I'm like sober. I've been sober for years. I mean, you don't want me drinking because it never ends well. Like I've been sober now for about 4.5 years. So I don't really have an escape like from myself, like I used to. I used to be able to get drunk or do a bunch of drugs or whatever. And so I can't really do that anymore. Of course, my dogs are a big outlet, and I have a lovely partner that I'm with, and he's, movies and whatever, but I can't always do stuff like that. And so baking, this is so cool. Baking has become, that's like my escape now. Like but it's a healthy escape. It's like I have something to show for it afterwards. Like I have cookies or like banana, or like, so actually today, in the middle of doing everything, I just stopped everything I was doing, and I was like, I'm gonna listen to Plastic Letters a couple times and kind of just let it sink in. And while I did that, I made like 4 dozen chocolate chip cookies, and I made banana, pineapple, carrot bread.
Oh my gosh.
With fresh grated ginger.
Ooh.
So good.
This is a scratch and sniff episode.
Yes.
Well, Gary Valentine quit, who was on the first album. He did submit a song, Presence Dear, which we'll talk about. So we have the 4 members here. Christine Pemberk, Jimmy Destry, and Debbie Harry.
Yep.
Still produced by Richard, who you knew, right?
Richard Goddard, yes.
Yep.
Richard Goddard.
This is definitely a transitional album. So what do you think? Any thoughts on the cover before we go into the track by track?
I mean, I love the cover is still like I don't like it as much as the first Blondie album cover.
Right.
I think it's still a cool album cover. This is definitely one of the things I was thinking is this is definitely like, okay, the first Blondie album is very like, girl group, 1960s retro, very pop, but like punk pop.
Yes.
This is more punk. Like this is more like punk. Like they get a little bit more, there's like some more angrier like singing on Debbie Harry's part. Like she actually gets so I think this is kind of their like it is a little all over the place. I mean, because, and you see kind of hints of other things that are going to happen later on. I kind of feel like there's a whole group of Blondie songs like Touched by Your Presence Dear, kind of like foreshadows like songs later on, like Shayla. You know what I mean? Like these like slower kind of like almost like acousticy, like Let's Get Stoned, like Blondie type of songs like that. They, I don't know. And then their cover of Denise, that kind of reminds me a little bit of, it's kind of along the same, in the same kind of group of songs of like Dreaming or something, like
Okay.
kind of has the same vibe. So yeah, I think this album still has a lot of foreshadowing, and of course there's still a lot of songs, and we talked about this last time, where Debbie Harry, she's a very weird lyricist, where she doesn't, like, she'll write some like love songs and whatever, but I mean, like, she's really into like telling stories.
Yeah.
So like a lot of her songs are like character studies of like, like, okay, here's this guy, like, he's, you're not sure if he's working for the KGB or something. And then like another song where, you're not sure, like, if like, okay, there's like, did this guy kidnap somebody, or, you know what I mean? Like, so, there's a lot of like story songs,
More on this album than some of the other ones, I felt like.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the songwriting credits, and I guess let's get into the track by track, since we are, we don't want to talk too long. Mm-hmm. One more thing, Daniel. Let me pause. All right. One final thing. This album to me definitely reminded me of some of the Ramones. Like, I feel like you can hear that New York City Ramones thing going on.
Ramones, but if Ramones used a lot of like analog synthesizers.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like a lot of like little zips and zaps going on.
So the album opens with a song called Fan Mail. This is actually one of my favorites. To me, the song feels very Blondie to me.
I like Fan Mail. I mean, it's kind of like she kind of gets guttural in the vocals. Like, she does like some guttural stuff, like especially towards the end. And,
they're ringing.
Yeah. It's kind of like kind of almost like, this is a very kind of Ramones sounding song.
Yeah.
It's very, very kind of like a punk rock type of, punk rock pop type of song.
I think it's a great opening track. Catches my ear. And one thing that Fan Mail has that some of the other songs don't have, to me, is a hook. Like, I felt like this is one of the least hooky Blondie albums.
And we're going to talk about that, because one of my favorite hooks, we'll get to the song, one of my favorite choruses has these verses. Well, we'll get to it.
Okay. Any other thoughts on Fan Mail?
No, not really. I mean, I like that. I think it's a great opening track for this album. Okay,
so next is Denise or whatever, a cover song. It was a hit song for them.
I absolutely love this song. I mean, to me, I love the harmonies. I mean, I know, this song is just, this is the type of Blondie that I love. Like, I mean, it's fun. She sounds great. I love that she starts singing in French halfway through. And then, it's just, it's really like it's a really pretty cover as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's very pretty sounding. I remember the weird thing about it is, I live out in the middle of nowhere in Tennessee, like I don't even live in Nashville. I live way out in the middle of nowhere. But, so I have to like drive into town, and it's a little small town. And so I was at the gym in my small town, and, they must get some service where like, we're playing hits of the 80s and hits of the 70s. And so this song came on, and it's weird, like all these like kind of like redneck kind of like country people were like working out, and Blondie was singing "Oh Johnny Ooby Doo," and it was just like, I was like really into it, and like I don't think probably nobody could hear, because everybody listens to their own music in the gym.
Right.
But I just thought it was so funny. It went from that into Joy Division, Love Will Tear Us Apart, and I was like, this is such a weird thing to be playing way out here in the middle of nowhere. I appreciated it, but
I think that's a sign of the times too. Like, all of our faves are now like the background music in a gym.
Exactly.
One of the Plastic Letter CDs I have has an alternate take of Denise too. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's a whole different vocal track. I think it's a whole re-recording.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'll drop it in the chat if you're interested in hearing it.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear that.
All right, we're moving on to a song written by Chris Stein. This is when the weird movie songs start. Bermuda Triangle Blues, Flight 45.
Yeah, it's kind of like, there's a really, as a matter of fact, I really like her vocal. She starts doing like all those like long notes at the end. Like, she actually sings this song really well. It's and they start, I mean, it kind of feels like at one point it kind of feels like a jam session.
Yeah, and this one also has like reminds me
Acoustic.
of like the seeds of like what Union City Blue would be later
Yeah, I
on.
mean, like they actually like I'm not really even sure if there was acoustic guitar on the first Blondie album, but like this song has acoustic guitar in it.
It's the prettiest song about an airplane getting lost in the Bermuda Triangle.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, so not my favorite.
Yeah, it's a lot of the songs on this album are put on the same level as this. Like how I feel about this song, I feel about probably like 3/4 of this album, to be honest with you. And then there's like the songs that stand out that are like wow,
really amazing. Yeah, yeah.
Youth Nabbed His Sniper, another story song written by Chris Stein wrote this one also. So what the hell were they thinking about in 1978 to write all these weird songs? This one about a teenager that ends up dying in the song, I think.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of like very much like that you can definitely hear like the whole CBGB's influence here, like the punk, like punk. Again, not one of my favorite songs.
Well, then we move on to a Jimmy Destry song, Contact in Red Square.
I actually like this song. Like, I like this song better than the other two that we just discussed. I thought, I mean, there's like a lot of it's kind of more of like a theatrical type song. I like the keyboards in it as well. It has like some really cool keyboard parts. I'm kind of but again, it's like, because then there's the weird thing about this album is like, so those three songs in the middle are kind of like, because as you've noticed, we talked about Fan Mail, Denise, but then like, so Bermuda Triangle, the Snub Cypher, and then the Red Square song, those three songs in the middle are kind of like, for me, the low point of, I mean, I'm not saying like they're not awful songs, but I mean, to me, because now we're about to talk about like two amazing songs that I love by, so it's like, I
definitely feel like
of the three songs, in the middle, I think that I think that, it's kind of a tie between the Bermuda Triangle and this song. I kind of like the same, and then I like the it's like and then the yeah. So
I kind of feel like, but if Blondie, of all their songs were like these three, they never would have been icons. Like this definitely is not prime Blondie here.
I mean, like, okay, I've written about it. At this point, I think I've written like I printed out my like a master song list of songs I've written, and it was like almost 1,000 songs.
Right.
Honestly, there's a bunch of duds in there. Like there's a bunch of songs they're just bad songs. I mean, I think you have to, as an artist, you have to honor all of it.
Yeah.
And in order to get to the great songs, we have to like go through some songs that aren't so great, but they're just part of the journey. You know what I mean? So
I feel like the weirdness of this album kind of set up for okay, this didn't quite work. Now let's make this third album, which we'll talk about next month.
Right. Yeah.
But all right. Next, a song written by Gary Valentine, covered by Tracy Ullman on her "You Broke My Heart in 17 Places" album, but done best by Debbie Harry and Blondie on Plastic Letters. I'm always touched by your presence, dear.
I absolutely love this song. This song is this is one of my favorite Blondie songs.
It's beautiful. It's it's everything that makes Blondie so fucking good.
Yeah. And great harmonies, and really interesting. And again, it's kind of more of like, it's not really like, even though it's kind of a faster song, it still feels like a ballad to me.
Right.
It still feels like a slower Blondie song, even though it's not like, I mean, it's not like fast, but I mean, it's just, there's something really dreamy about it. I think also, like the lyrics, like the lyrics are all about like, you're not really sure if it's like psychic people falling in love or
right.
like, I'm still not quite sure what it's about. Like if they're, I think again, she's just kind of like telling a story. Like what if to, it's almost like what if to like, the first, like whenever I hear it, I almost picture like two psychic mediums, like falling in love or something.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what it feels like to me.
I feel like the otherworldliness of the lyrics kind of lends itself to the whole theme of the song. But
Yeah.
it's interesting, a lot of Blondie stuff up to this point. Like, he had the stuff that sounded like the 60s, like the 50s. He had a lot of stuff that sounded like 70s punk. I feel like Present Steer is just timeless. Like the best Blondie songs.
It doesn't have that's great. Yeah. It doesn't feel like tied to any specific date.
I feel like it could come out today by like an indie band and it would sound current.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one of my favorite Blondie songs, Gary Valentine. Thanks for writing that song for Blondie. Yes. Side one ends with I'm on E. She did not mean ecstasy, or did she?
No, but I still love this song. I think it's the hook is really great in it. It's a great hook.
Don't you feel it's very Ramones in a way?
Very Ramones, and it's it's like I like how robotic it is, like that when she's like saying she's on E, like it has kind of almost like a robotic like vocal delivery. It reminds me of a lot of other bands, but it's still like it reminds me of a lot of other bands from afterwards. But I mean, like they were doing like it, So yeah, and of course, as somebody who's like done tons of drugs, like I can't help but think that she's talking about ecstasy when she does it.
But it was kind of a double entendre, right? Because there was a gas shortage in the 70s, so they also say it was about that. So Debbie, we know what you mean though. Written by Debbie Harry and Chris Stein. So a great end to side one. Moving on to side two. It opens with a Debbie Harry and Jimmy Destry collaboration. I didn't have the nerve to say no. I like this song. I think it has a lot of attitude. It has a great hook.
That's what I was going to say. Okay, so this song, I love the chorus hook. I mean, I like the whole song. Right. I love the chorus hook. Like the chorus hook is one of my favorite chorus hooks for a Blondie song. It's just really fun. I want the whole song to be that vibe. That the verses are very they're cool, but they're very choppy feeling.
Right.
Like you got answer. And like it's all like these starts and stops with the drums. Like it's like a lot of, and then all of a sudden it goes into this like real good time chorus, like this really good time fun sounding chorus that's really friggin' catchy. And it's like the selfish part of me wants the whole song to be like that, like where it's just like this seamless, like just I like the verses. It's I know it's just me being like, I just want to hear that. It's almost like I want to, yeah, and I want the chorus. There's a couple times where they go into a double chorus and then they do it like more than just once, and it's like I really get into it, and then they stop it again.
We keep talking about how songs are precursors of things to come. For some reason, I can't help but feel a little bit of Die Young, Stay Pretty in the chorus. Just a tiny bit of that like hook with the guys doing the background vocals.
I love that song.
I know. We have some albums coming up that blew my mind.
As a matter of fact, when I was, this is a true story. The different album, so we shouldn't be talking about it, but my Die Young, Stay Pretty story is this. My mom, some friend of hers back me, because my mom went to church and everything. I mean, I'm not a religious person or anything, but like my mom went to church, and one of her friends in church, this is the early 80s, mind you, And so this is when the whole Satan and rock and roll thing was happening. Like,
play the records backwards.
Yeah, play the records backwards and whatever. So there was this preacher. And so one of my mom's friends had his sermon on cassette tape. And it was this guy talking about Satan and rock and roll. And oh my God. And he was talking about like Black Oak, Arkansas. Like if you play their record back, it says like, because he keeps saying Natas, Natas. And so like when he said,
oh Lord.
And then he played Stairway to Heaven backwards, and he talked about the movie The Decline of Western Civilization, which made me want to see the movie. But he's talked about like X, the band X, and how they're like living in a church and there's like graffiti everywhere. And then he was talking about and then he played one of the songs by the Germs, and I mean, he was like, "Do you call this music? This sounds like Satan," you know. And so, anyways, one of the songs he played, he's like, and then there's Blondie, and then he was like, talked about how, you know, Debbie Harry's like, he mentioned Die Young, Stay Pretty, like that. She was basically telling kids to go kill themselves.
Oh Lord. Look we all survived. We're in our
I'm still here.
Yep, we're still here. We made it. Well, moving on, Plastic Letters. Now we have a bunch of more weird movie-ish songs. Love at the Pier, written by Debbie Harry. I don't have much to say about this one.
I do have something to say about this one. So I was like, I had thought this before, and then I forgot that I thought this because I was listening to it again today, and I was like, oh yeah. So I was like, why does this song sound so familiar? There's like it has the same hook. I'm not saying they plagiarized it, so I don't want to start any lawsuits or anything. But it has the same hook as Judy in Disguise. If you listen.
Oh, it does. I hear the similarities.
I was like, why does this sound so familiar? It's like Judy in Disguise. I mean, so the vocals are different, but the
right.
So I thought that was funny. You know, and then it reminded me, because the reason why I know that is because my sister, I'm the youngest of 6 kids, so I was born in 1969. So when I was like 4, my sister had a 45 of Judy in Disguise, which I used to play. So go figure.
Doesn't this song have a great last line though? I was reading through all the lyrics earlier. Let me look.
Oh, no, she's talking about at one point, sneakers. She's saying something about.
Okay. Now I go to beaches with my girlfriend. Now more love splinters in my rear end are the last lyrics. So very Debbie Harry there with the lyrics.
This is definitely there. It's weird. This song, even though there's like some real trippy, like acousticy type of songs, this album does have kind of it's one of their more like, they were never like a punk band. You know what I mean? Right. Like I know when she was on the Muppets, she was like giving out punk rock merit badges and stuff like that, you know, but like it was, you know, they were like definitely more of like a new wave / punk band, you know? So like, but this was definitely felt like the most punk of their albums to me.
And I feel like
even more so than their first album.
Yeah. I feel like they had more of a budget on this album, but it sounds more lo-fi to me than the first album.
It does. It really does. Yeah. And I think maybe it's because and this is why a sophomore slump sometimes happens. I think the sound of their first album was extremely focused.
Right.
And I think Blondie, as you know, over time, they really did experiment with a lot of different styles. Like they didn't stay with one thing, which is why I love them. And when they're, you know, and it's a really hard thing for a band to do what, you know, I mean, some bands, man, they just have their sound. Like we mentioned the Ramones. The Ramones have their sound. Like this is a Ramones album. I'm a big fan of X. X has their sound. You know, it's like that rock punkabilly, rockabilly. The Cramps have their sound. You know, like it's like gothy, psychobilly, you know, whatever. Not psychobilly, but like a goth, you know, like punkabilly. What? You know, Susie has her sound. Kind of dark. You know, Blondie, they're kind of all over the place. You know, music. Like, I mean, you know, I think if I was going to pigeonhole them, I would say like, well, they're like a real, like important new wave, like the era of new wave band. Right. But, you know, disco, punk,
reggae,
friggin' horn, like Heart of Glass, like horns and like almost sounds like you're, you know, like the mambo music, you know what I mean? Like
Giorgio Moroder.
I mean, like, you know, so like the same band that did Hanging on the Telephone also did Island of Lost Souls.
Right.
Did Orchid Club.
Did Victor.
Victor. Yeah, Victor, which is really dark. I mean, you know, that's like literally about as that's like almost goth,
Right.
punk screaming in it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's, and then but then like, go to sleep, like, I mean,
Right.
like, I mean, they're kind of, captured by the game. I mean, like they are Little Caesar. I mean, like they go kind of all over the place as a band. All their albums, their first album is one of the most focused ones
Yeah.
because I think they went in and it's like they kind of went for a sound. I think they wanted to branch out, which is great that they did. Like they ended up recording some of their best songs, some of the best songs ever. I mean,
Right.
not just their best songs, some of the best songs
Agreed.
ever recorded, which is why they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Totally
Right.
deserved. I think their second album has the dubious distinction of being them as a band, and they were also having a member leave,
Right.
so which is very traumatic for a band. But then also wanting to like break out and try other things. So they still, I think, probably had some songs. I mean, I'm not really sure, but like some of these songs were probably also songs that they already had kicking around that they probably wanted to document. So they were still holding on to some of these older songs that didn't cut from the first album, but then they also wanted to branch out. And so like you started seeing a lot of glimmers of like things to come in this album. They hadn't really found a way to effectively branch out and conquer all these other genres yet. So it's almost like they're kind of like just dabbling in certain things. So it does seem like there's a lot of great ideas on this album, but it's not quite there yet. Parallel Lines, they just like knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, big time.
Probably getting different producers. I mean, it's like they probably just needed
they needed the Mike Chapman to come along and set the parallel lines. One thing that I did think of though, I think the first album is a testament to no matter how low the budget is or lo-fi the recording is, a great song is a great song. I think the first album just has great songwriting.
Great songs.
So no matter how it's recorded, that's why it glimmers. I think it's the songwriting because I don't think the songs are as great on the second album. Next, we have No Imagination by Jimmy Destry.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have too much to say about this one either.
I mean, the one thing I do appreciate on this is some really great piano playing on it.
Right, which, of course, because Destry wrote it, has a heavier keyboard.
As a matter of fact, it's one of the most piano-heavy Blondie songs, I think, of their entire catalog.
Right.
Like piano is kind of like the main thing, So.
You don't hear that a lot.
No. And then...
All right. Up next.
One is one of the most bizarre Blondie songs to me. It's just like...
Kidnapper. Jimmy Destry songs are all over the place on this album.
This one is like... It's like...
I feel it's like doo-wop country.
It goes to like a hoedown.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It's definitely... it's definitely probably my least favorite song on the album. It's just, I don't know. They're not like a country band to me.
Right.
Like this really feels like, and then I'm still not quite sure what's going on in this song. Like if it's, she didn't know you were the kidnapper, it's like, so I'm not really sure like if a guy's like kidnapping people or what's going on.
Yeah, definitely some head scratching moments, both with the sound and lyrical content of this song. Mm-hmm. You know what though? I will say I'm glad they made this weird ass album. Like I'm glad we have these songs and we can sit here and talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
I would have hated if they skipped from the first album to Parallel Lines. This is definitely the transition that I'm glad to witness. Next, a Stein and Destry collaboration, Detroit 442.
I like this song. I mean, I think this song's a cool song. I think it actually has some really catchy lyrics. It has some good hooks in it.
Back to the rock thing, kind of.
Yeah. It kind of almost has like a little bit of a funk, like it's like rock, but then it has kind of a funky thing
Right.
to me. Um, you know, she has some very kind of like her vocal delivery is like she's kind of getting more like, what's the word? Not aggressive, but just kind of like
Spirited. She's definitely spirited.
yeah, it's very ballsy vocal delivery
Very
that she,
assertive. I feel like she's very assertive on this one.
yeah. So I like this song. Yeah.
So far we've gone to Bermuda Triangle. We have a youth that's a sniper. We're in Red Square.
Mhm.
We're on the pier. We have a kidnapper, and then Detroit 442. This
Mhm.
album ends. I always put this last song, Cautious Lip, is in the same category as the Attacks of the Giant Ants from the first album. Just these weird ass songs that end
It's
these first two Blondie albums.
it's very weird song. This is a very weird song.
Like the synthesizers. It reminds me of the Nightmare Band from Emmett Otter's drug band Christmas.
Yeah, and she's kind of like doing this really weird thing with her voice in it too. Like she's kind of like doing this real, almost like guttural, like bizarre. I think she was like really feeling experimental with her vocals in this one.
I think I was 7 when I got this album. The song scared me a little bit when I was a kid.
I mean, I actually think this song's a pretty cool song. I mean, I actually listened to it a couple times today. Actually, there's like a lot of cool sounds in it. And what I always have to remember too is that I also need to remember that the time in which these were recorded. I mean, these
Right.
were recorded in 1978, so it's like like a song like this is like very cutting edge for 1978. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
for
like
sure.
this whole album. I mean, I have to also just give credit where credit is due. It's like even though these aren't some of my favorite, this is definitely like not my favorite Blondie album. I think we've kind of established that.
Right.
There's some amazing songs. Some of my favorite Blondie songs are on this album. So if there's any diehard fans watching, I am a diehard fan. Don't hate me for not
Right.
just loving everything. I mean, it's like I do love this album, but I just don't love it as much as a bunch of other albums,
Now here's
but
something I didn't know, and this is gonna blow your mind. This album actually came out in late 77 in Japan with a different track list. Did you know
oh,
that? I didn't know that till I just looked it up. I always thought it was a 78.
I did not know that until
So
right now.
a Kidnapper's on side 1 of the original release, just
Huh.
in case you're curious.
Maybe they were test marketing it in
Yes.
Japan.
And then it came back out on side 2 on the second pressing.
Well,
Well,
yeah.
I always do end the episode with how do we rank this on a scale of 1 to 10? In the lexicon of Blondie, I think I gave the first album a 10, didn't I?
I think you did. And I think I gave it, I can't remember what I gave it. I really love the first album. It's a very, this one, I would say it's like a 6 for me.
Yep.
Comparison to other Blondie albums.
I was gonna say 7 just because I'm always touched by your presence, dear. Is one of the best songs ever written.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, between 6 and 7. I mean, I'm kind of right there with you. We're getting into a period. I mean, the exciting thing is that we're getting into a period where like some of their best albums are coming up.
And some of the best albums ever released by any band, I
you know,
consider.
Eat to the Beat, and Parallel Lines. Yeah, so there's like a lot of good stuff coming up.
And this will be something we talk about in the upcoming months, but I'm not sure which album I think is better, Eat to the Beat or Parallel Lines. To me, they're very close.
They're very close, but they're very different.
Right.
Each Beat is more edgy.
Yeah.
It's more edgy than Parallel Lines. I mean, it's definitely like Parallel Lines is Eat to the Beat is kind of like Eat to the Beat. The weird thing about Eat to the Beat, I know we're not talking about these albums right now, but I almost feel like so Blondie just like became like this Blondie has their punk rock roots, you know,
Right.
and all of a sudden Blondie was everywhere. Like, you know, once Heart of Glass hit, yeah, that was it. I mean, it was just like they literally became like, I mean, Taylor Swift big. I mean, like Perry was like, they were like huge, like #1 songs. I mean, you know, like selling out big stadiums, being on the Muppets. I mean, like, you know, just everywhere. I mean, you could not get away from them. And it's almost like for a band like that to suddenly like have that crazy fame, but to come from those punk rock roots,
to have released this album right before Parallel Lines,
and then all of a sudden like to like have like the, you know, all these like, you know, huge hits that like, you know, and sound so polished. It's almost like eat to the beat. Like it's almost like they wanted to remind people, look, you know, we've still got this, like, they had to like release an album that like had like angrier stuff on it, like to kind of like remind people, like, look, we're still Blondie, like we're still like, we've still got this edge to us.
We're not adult contemporary or easy listening, and we never will be.
I mean, not that Parallel Lines is not, you know.
Oh, of course.
Like, but it's like, you know, I think, well, because Parallel Lines had one of the biggest disco hits of all time, and so a lot, you know, that actually at the time, people forget that like when Blondie had a huge disco song, which is a friggin' amazing song, one of the best songs ever recorded. I mean, Heart of Glass is,
yeah, you can't dispute that,
one of the most important songs ever recorded in my opinion. And I know like that sounds like a cliche thing to say when you're talking about Blondie, but I mean it's because it's true. It's a work of art, you know.
There's a reason it propelled them to the next level.
Yeah, there's a reason why you still hear it on the radio now all the time. I mean, it's a classic song. But at the time it was very much tied to disco, and for a lot of their fan base at the time, like, and I remember reading a Rolling Stone article years ago, and they talk about how I think it was Rolling Stone, how that there was like a bunch of people in the punk scene who were like, I don't know, mad that Blondie was like had a disco song.
Right.
So, you know, it's weird. It's like stuff sticks to people. And so you almost wonder, like, did they get some of that feedback, or like hear people being catty? You know, probably people who are jealous, you know.
For sure.
You know,
you lived in New York, you know how competitive and how important authenticity is.
Like, oh, they went disco. I mean, I could almost hear like some jaded douchebag saying that, and then somebody from Blondie hearing it, and you know, that hurts. You know, like words can sting, and so then it's almost like Blondie. Then they came back and made "Eat to the Beat," which was like, you know, this, you know, like, look, we're still this edgy band, you know. So, anyways, but
yes. So, Daniel, thank you for talking about Plastic Letters. Thanks to my Patreon and my subscribers. Yeah, we will see you all next month, and get Daniel's album. Give him one more plug to your website and all that stuff.
DanielCartier.com, and the album is called Mixtape Summer.
All right. Well, look up Mixtape Summer, and I will see you next month, my friend.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.